Okay, so thank you for joining our functional medicine discussion for meeting tonight with about homeopathy with Ananda Moore, who's a homeopath and filmmaker, straight from Toronto, Canada. You can find videos of some of our previous meetings if you go to my Weitz Cairo YouTube page. Also, please check out my Rational Wellness podcast on iTunes and YouTube. Many thanks to Metagenics for sponsoring the event tonight. I wanted to mention to those of you who do not use Metagenics supplements that they offer the highest quality supplements with therapeutic dosages of scientifically proven ingredients. And I wanted to mention one of their products that we find especially helpful is Estrovira, which is a rhubarb extract, and it's very beneficial for menopausal hot flashes and night sweats and the other symptoms, and there's scientific evidence that it's beneficial, and there's also a money-back guarantee for the patients. So I just wanted to talk for a few minutes about homeopathy to kind of set the evening to get it started. For those of you who are not familiar with homeopathy, what exactly is it? According to Wikipedia, which is the source of all knowledge, kidding, homeopathy is a system of alternative medicine created in 1796 by Samuel Hahnemann, and it's based on the doctrine of like cures like, the claim that a substance that causes the symptoms of a disease in healthy people would cure similar symptoms in sick people. There are quite a number of studies that show the effectiveness of homeopathy, while a number of other studies show no benefit. Scientists and mainstream doctors tend to be quite skeptical because some of the theories behind homeopathy don't line up with some of the principles of chemistry and physics. For example, the concept that by diluting a homeopathic formulation more, it gets stronger, which goes against the principle that you need a minimum of the active ingredient to create an effect in the body. And this skepticism, combined with a report produced in 2015 in Australia by the National Health and Medical Research Council that declared that there are no health conditions for which there is reliable evidence that homeopathy is effective, has led to a number of countries around the world now stopping their health systems from paying for homeopathy, and even a move towards trying to restrict its access. And unfortunately, there's a lot of controversy about that report. They used some weird methodologies. They didn't include any studies that had less than 150 participants, and apparently there was a first report that was issued that they never released, so there's a move to try to get them to do that. Anyway, still, over 5 million adults in the US and over 1 million children use homeopathy on a yearly basis, and many get positive effects, and there's virtually no side effects. Amanda Moore is our special guest tonight, so we're going to have a Q&A now. Anybody who wants to participate, raise your hand, and we're going to come around with microphones so everybody can hear. Why don't you take this microphone, and we'll use this one, and we'll use 2 chairs. So how did you get started with homeopathy?
Well, in the full film, I tell the story, but I was very skeptical of homeopathy, and I was first introduced to it in university when I took a course on witchcraft and the occult in the religious studies department. So you can imagine the perspective I came out of that with regarding homeopathy. It seemed quite silly to me. Is there anyone in this room who isn't familiar with homeopathy and what it is? All right. So that notion of dilution to me just seemed ridiculous, and I didn't understand how masses of people were falling for this. And then years later, I found myself in India, quite ill. I won't go into the details, but a friend of mine that I was traveling with, her mother was a homeopath, and she was traveling with her little first aid kit. And she was like, here, take some of this. I was just like, whatever, give it to me. And within like 15 minutes, I felt so much better. It started the ball rolling, it changed my mind, or it just opened up my mind to the possibility of what it could be. And at that point, I went to a homeopath, and the homeopathy helped me with lifelong depression that I had been struggling with. And that's never returned. That was, I don't know, like 20 years ago. So having gone through that, I thought, I gave up. I was on my way to law school. I decided I wanted to do something else there and then, and I went and studied homeopathy instead.
Can you tell us about the science behind homeopathy? Is there really science behind it?
It's a big question. Yeah, there's a lot of science right now. There's a solid evidence-based. It's relatively small and requires a lot more work, but we do have thousands of studies already done to date. In terms of placebo-controlled clinical trials, there's about 186, I think maybe more now since the film was put out. And only 5% of those studies are negative. So they really align with how you see studies in conventional medicine. Around 50% are positive, 45% are inconclusive, and 5% are negative. And we're seeing those same patterns. We also have a lot of basic science studies. So studies looking at homeopathy on cell lines and petri dishes, on plants, on animals, where there shouldn't be any placebo effect, regardless. And we have a lot of replicated studies along those lines as well. And now we're at the point where we're starting to understand the possible processes or the methods by which homeopathy may be working. It's not that it doesn't align with science, it's that science is finally becoming more advanced and we're starting to have different ways of looking at things.
What do you mean?
So the way we can, an electron microscope, for example, they've now discovered nanoparticles of source material in remedies. And it started in the Bombay Institute of Technology where they first observed this. And now it's been replicated over a dozen times in labs all over the world. They started by looking at metal remedies, because those were the easiest to identify at a nanoparticle level, but now they're looking at organic compounds as well. And there's a doctor out of Arizona, Dr. Ira Spell, who's been doing a lot of this research and driving that. But again, replicated over and over again, we're seeing these results. We now have the ability to look at water clusters, the actual formation of water molecules themselves, and are they being affected by the remedies in the process of succussion and dilution. And the succussion is what's really important. So when we shake the remedy between dilutions, we actually create very, very high temperatures in those vials for nanoseconds, but extraordinarily high. We're also breaking down the material into nanoparticles, and we're getting silica nanoparticles off the glass, and silica is a transmitter. And then there's theories around nanobubbles. These nanoparticles carry charges, which then inform the water, which creates nanobubbles. So there's different things that have been observed. We've looked at polar dyes, and we can see the difference between homeopathy and just water, electromagnetic fields. So there's been a ton of studies in that basic science, physics area, where we're now able to see the difference between the two medicines. We don't yet understand the mechanism. We don't understand how that's communicating with our bodies. There's ideas around cell membranes, around mitochondria, but there's still a lot to know, and there's very little funding for homeopathy because there's very little money in it. You can't patent a remedy. You can replicate a remedy from a source over and over again, so it's very hard to protect. And there's not a lot of money in it for the pharmaceutical industry. So, and who funds most of our research? It's pharma.
Yeah.
So it makes it tricky.
And it's difficult to get homeopathic studies published, right?
Yeah, so there's a huge publishing bias. Years ago, people could get their studies published. Now, like in the Cubans study, they submitted it to a bunch of different journals, and they got excuses like, it's not really for our audience, or, we need you to get a signature from all 2.5 million people who participated. And these guys were not homeopaths. They actually have they're editors of their own journal on vaccines. And they were, being in Cuba, they're very isolated from pharma and the lobby efforts around it. And they were in shock when these journals who'd always published their work refused to publish their work. And when their work did get published, Dr. Bratcher told me he stopped reading his email at 60 death threats. And he didn't leave the country for years after that. He was afraid for his life. And then their own journal, a vaccine journal, lost its PubMed indexing because of their association with homeopathy. Dr. Jayesh Ballare in India, who's a chemical engineer, works with nanoparticles, started doing a little bit of research into homeopathy, and suddenly found for the first time he couldn't get published. He says that as soon as they see the word homeopathy in the title or the abstract, it gets rejected right away, and it doesn't actually go into peer review. So there's a huge bias there as well.
Can you talk about the study out of Australia from the National Health and Medical Research Council?
Right. So the NHMRC in Australia produced a report, a survey of homeopathy in 2015 that was supposed to look at whether there was any evidence for any pathology for homeopathy. And it's really long document. It takes a lot of insight and knowledge to kind of get through it and understand what they're trying to do and say. They arbitrarily set their standard for what they decided was a good study at a minimum of 150 patients. And this very nicely cherry-picked the 1,800 studies they claim to have looked at to only 5. One of those studies was one of our best studies on homeopathy that was conducted by Jennifer Jacobs, and it looks at homeopathy for acute children's diarrhea. But somehow they forgot to address that. That study was positive in their conclusions, and very positive. And they focused on the 4 that were negative. The other issue is that they look at studies that don't have external validity. So they're not using homeopathy the way it's actually used in practice. Homeopathy is individualized. So they'd look at a study that looks at 5,000 people ran a marathon. How do they do if they take arnica or don't take arnica? Versus let's look at their actual symptoms and choose the appropriate remedy for what they're expressing. So that's another major flaw. But it just goes on and on and on and on. They actually got rejected for peer review because their methodology was so weak. And it's very rare to see an anti-homeopathy study rejected for peer review, so it tells you how bad it was. And yet, this study has become the pivotal study that they're using all over the world to change health policy in regards to homeopathy. In the United Kingdom, they've closed down all the homeopathic hospitals. In Italy right now, they're I think trying to make homeopathy illegal. In Australia, they've shut down all the colleges and schools, and again, they're on the verge of trying to make homeopathy illegal. Here in the US, the FDA recently published a draft guidance document that would make homeopathy illegal, and there's a group called Americans for Homeopathy Choice that have been putting in petitions and cogs in the wheel, so it would have passed by now, but thanks to them, it hasn't, and we have till the end of December. So if this is important to you, I urge you to go to their website, and they have instructions on how to write letters to the FDA. And their website is homeopathychoice.org. Further with this study, when the Australian Homeopathic Association did a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information request on the study, they learned that there had been a previous study done by a very well-respected scientist They've seen reviews on the study that said that the methodology was very high, and yet that study was buried. They fired the lead scientist on that, and they started a whole new study. So right now, there's also a petition out there to release that first report. And if you're on your cell phones or you're writing stuff down, the website for that is releasethefirstreport.com. And there's a petition there. And we need people all over the world to sign that petition. And they're on the verge of suing the NHMRC for getting that document released.
What was the first website you said?
Homeopathychoice.org. Or you can do a Google search for Americans for Homeopathy Choice. And they're a consumer-based organization that's doing incredible work here in the States. Really
Americans
important.
for Homeopathy
Choice.
So what's the latest from the FDA? So they issued that draft guidance, right?
So that guidance, I think, came out in December of last year. And basically, when the FDA, the senator who pushed the creation of the FDA was actually a homeopath. So homeopathy was automatically grandfathered into the FDA. And over time, they finessed it. There was some great, the compendium for, I'm trying to remember what it stands for, the CPG was the compendium for, I can't remember, but there's a document, the CPG 400.400, that basically outlines manufacturing requirements so that there is oversight over the manufacturing of homeopathics in this country. And this new draft guidance document basically removes all of that guidance and just says, well, homeopathic remedies haven't gone through a new drug approval process, so in fact they're illegal. However, we're going to pursue this on a risk-based way. So we're going to go first for remedies that are being marketed towards pregnant women, towards babies, towards people who are immunologically, who have issues immunologically. But really they're setting the stage with this document to say, you haven't passed as a new drug, you're not really allowed to produce it in this country. Yeah, we've got till the end of December, or mid-December maybe, so it's right there. It's very rigid.
Why aren't homeopathic medications considered similar to herbal and nutritional supplements?
Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah,
because they call them medicines.
we call them remedies usually, but because they came through in a different way, and they were approved in a different way. And what it seems is that the head of the FDA right now is close to retiring, and she wants to leave behind a legacy which included the destruction of homeopathy. That's kind of the interpretation we're coming up with. Sorry?
So
Yeah.
So in a practical sense, what do you think the best way for somebody, if they want to seek a homeopath, how do you know the best person to go to?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's hard because homeopathy is very difficult, and I think finding a really good practitioner is hard. But word of mouth is a great way. People who've had good experiences. I can recommend a couple in LA that I think are phenomenal.
Can you do that? Like
Yeah.
publicly? Or? Okay.
Well, I can
Okay.
give you their names later. But yeah, it's harder to find good practitioners when the education system isn't where it should be with homeopathy.
It's a complicated science. I mean, I've been using it since my kids were born. Like on the birthing table, like, my husband, give me the Ananda, and when the doctor went away. But I think I know 2 or 3 remedies,
Yeah.
and that's it. There's so many that could be used for so many different things.
Yeah, we have thousands of remedies. So you can imagine if each one had to go through the new product registration. That's $300 million per remedy, per pathology.
Wow.
And the way they want the research isn't the way homeopathy research is done, because you have to look at the individualization of the remedy or of a person. You can't just say, let's just look at rest tox for arthritis for everybody. It doesn't work that way. So it's very tricky, and even though we have $1 billion homeopathic industry in the US, $300 million per remedy, you got 3 remedies and you've hit that $1 billion. Yeah.
There's a company that's manufacturing some of the homeopathic remedies in the United States, and they put on a course where they're using homeopathy as medicine to treat various different conditions to try to do that. What do you think of that course?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I don't know what the course is. I don't know what pharmacy it is. I know Boiron does a course for medical professionals.
That's
with,
what I'm talking about.
With like a basic introduction to homeopathy, and it's great to kind of give you a preliminary idea, maybe try some stuff out, but you're not going to become very proficient very quickly. But with an acute book you can do a lot, and with a course like that you can maybe help some kids with tear infections, and you can do some stuff that you can try before you need to do other things, and it's worth giving a go. Yeah.
So how would you recommend studying homeopathy?
Well, there used to be a school in Carlsbad. I don't know what the schools are in LA, but there are homeopathic colleges all over the country. There's naturopathic colleges that teach homeopathy as part of their curriculum. There's online programs that are very good, one through a school in New York, even through a great school in Toronto, and preceptoring. But I would look it up. You can go to the National Center for Homeopathy and the AIH, which is I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but there's homeopathic organizations you can reach out to, and they'll help you in terms of getting a homeopathic education.
Is there a certification that you can say if a homeopath has passed this?
Yes, there is in the US a certification, and again, being Canadian, I don't remember the acronym, like CHC or something of the sort.
Is that a rigorous sort of standard that if they pass that, we can have confidence that they...
Yeah, I would say so.
How long would you say it might take to be proficient at it, to really be able to help people?
Right, well, most of the courses are about 3 years, and then you start practicing. But like anything, it's lifelong, like Camilla was saying in the video. Most homeopaths say, I didn't get a hang of it until I was doing it for at least 10 years. But you can do, even with Ontario College of Homeopathic Medicine, I know what they do quite well, and they have an introductory course that's quite explicit and goes through a lot of material. And you could probably do a bunch of acute prescribing from something like that. Yeah. And books, there's thousands of books that you can definitely learn from as well if you're just doing home prescribing.
Could you mention a couple of more useful and scientific ones?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just getting started, I would start looking at some of the acute care books. Reichenberg Ullman has a couple of books. It's remembering names, I can picture the book covers. Richard Pitt has some good work. The Tholkus has excellent introductory to homeopathy in terms of understanding the theory behind it. But if you want, we can chat after, and I can guide you to some stuff. There's some websites too. Minimum homeopathy. No, David Little. I'll find it for you. We can talk about it. So I wanted to mention that the film itself is playing in Topanga next week on the 7th at 7:15 at their library. And what you saw were excerpts from the film. The film actually really takes a look at how the media and the skeptic community has created a narrative about homeopathy and then challenges it with these stories and the actual data and the evidence base. So there's a lot more into the actual film, and it's been at a few film festivals. We've been touring around the world with it. I just came back from a small tour in Europe, and went to Iceland and England and Ireland, and it's been playing all over Europe. And now we really want to scale up here in the US. And we have this process where we're doing community screenings. And you can even sign up for a small screening in your living room, like the Tupperware party-size screening. And you can just do that by going to our website. But we think that by bringing community together, bringing people together, and sharing this, we can start to build a new conversation around homeopathy. And 30% of all the screening license fees are going to support Americans for Homeopathy Choice and the work they're doing, and most of it is to legal fees right now. That's where all their money's going, to legal fees to lobby the FDA and lobby government. So I think it's really important to support them.
I just want to say that screening on the 7th, December 7th, Friday night, the Topanga Peace Alliance, which has been around for, I guess, since the 60s. They do a monthly film series, and so their monthly film series is going to be Magic Pills, and it's at the Topanga Library, right on Topanga Road. And it starts at 7:15. All you have to do is show up, and you can just pay at the door. It's just a donation. So the whole film will be there, and the Q&A, and we hope to see more of you out there. And thanks for coming out on a rainy night.
And if you do want to get more involved, we have a sheet at the front that I just put out that you can put your name on. It'll go to our newsletter. So we share all the work that's going around advocacy for homeopathy around the world, and we'll let you know when the film's out on Netflix, perhaps, and on like streaming services, DVD, that sort of thing as well. But we're really trying to get a grassroots community growing in order to support homeopathy around the world at this point in time.
What about teaming up with like the Institute of Functional Medicine or the E4M group to have, homeopathy part of their curriculum, because they seem to have some, political power?
That would be awesome. Can you help facilitate those connections? I don't know. I'm not familiar with them, but I'm quite there. I work closely with a bunch of the homeopathic organizations here, so we can maybe put them in touch and get them working together. That'd be great. And you can learn more on our website too, magicpillsmovie.com. Be part of the conversation on the Facebook page, Magic Pills Movie. All that really helps and does help us make a difference when we're trying to get theaters to screen it and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you, Ananda.
Thank you.